Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suryansh from the Entrepreneurship Cell of the Indian Institute of Information Technology, Pune, your host for this pleasant evening. And on behalf of the E02 team, I welcome you all with great pleasure to the very first episode of Breaking Convention Season 2, brought to you by ESET IIIT Pune. After a successful Season 1, we are back with the promise of introducing you to some of the most innovative minds from the world of business. And in the course of the next 3 days, they'll share their ideas and stories that will help young aspirants like you and me to build the right fortitude towards becoming a successful individual. And for that very noble cause, today I have the privilege to introduce you to our very special guest, Mr. Prasoon Gupta, ladies and gentlemen. He's the co-founder and CEO of Sattviko. Sattviko started in 2014 as a quick service restaurant, and it soon became a health and a lifestyle brand. A dynamic person, an alumnus of the prestigious IIT Roorkee and Stanford University, Mr. Prasoon is someone who has been breaking the stereotypes and following the lesser traversed path towards success. He has the ability to envision and articulate a successful future both compellingly and inclusively. Well, in his final year of college, he started a tech company called TechBuddy, which Mr. Gupta describes as Coursera for India. In an age where half of the youth is still figuring out what they want to do with their lives, Sir chose to help others in their careers, after which he turned towards the food industry. And Sattviko was born. But that too has an exciting story behind it. Hello, sir, and welcome to IIIT Pune.
Thank you, Suryansh.
So, before we dive deeper into the what, when, and how of technicalities, I would like you to answer this basic question. So, this is how the world knows Prasoon Gupta as. But who is Mr. Prasoon Gupta according to you?
So, Suryansh, I think thank you so much for such a great introduction. Although at times, you always feel that in your journey of entrepreneurship, you're always starting up. So I think I can just tell that today I am an entrepreneur and I am a yogi. So I am deeply into two of my passions. One is entrepreneurship and second is yoga. So that's what I basically live in my life. And apart from that, I love interacting with co-entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs. So I think thank you so much for inviting me here, Suryansh.
Right. So since you said that being a yogi is an essential part of describing who you are as well, so I would like to coin the term that you coined, Sattviko. It is derived from the word Sattvik. And there was a very interesting definition about Sattvik, which you, I think, said in an interview earlier, that Sattvik means something which brings peace to your mind. So I would like you to elaborate a bit more about what Sattvik actually is and how is it related to the food industry.
So, Suryansh, if you actually go deeper into yoga, you would realize that most of the most authentic ancient text in yoga, including that of Hatha Yoga Pradipika and Bhagavad Gita as well, for that matter, they talk a lot about yoga. And when they talk about yoga, they talk a lot about food. So food per se is a very important element when you actually look at yoga, because in yoga we talk about, I'm not going to get into details about that, but there is something called prana. So prana is nothing but it's the energy that flows inside us, and food actually is a very important element to create the right prana in us. In fact, to an extent where the entire science of Ayurveda is based on this concept of food. So in our ancient texts, it was believed that it is the right food that creates the right person, both in terms of the body, mind, and soul. So when you say what is the right food, the food of a yogi was described as Sattvik food.
Okay.
I was introduced to this concept way back, and I somehow thought that maybe if we have such a rich ancient science in food, why this science has not been understood by the world? And probably the reason is that ancient science was never reinvented so as to basically suit to the modern choices and basically the modern consumers. So I think that's why we called our brand Sattviko. We reinvent the ancient yogic food sciences into modern avatars, which are basically in sync with the modern consumer choices and obviously loaded with the benefits of yoga. So that's what Sattvik is.
Okay, so that was a very interesting definition about Sattvik. I'm sure that our audience would now understand what Sattvik is. But being from a technical background, being from an institute like IIT, how did you ended up being in something which is so ancient and this yogic science? And do you feel that this ancient science should be introduced to people at an even younger age, where most of the youth is kind of reprimanding it and it is going against it?
So, Suryansh, I think you are very right in this. I think science is science, whether we understand it from the point of view of technology or we understand it from the point of view of belief. So I think yoga itself, being a very ancient science, it has had its own journey. So the first yogic test, if we actually go back 5,000 years back, then you read into Upanishads about yoga, then you read into Bhagavad Gita about yoga, then you actually read into Patanjali's Yoga Sutra about yoga, and subsequently there were more people who came and actually created their own, or basically created their own stuff around the science of yoga. So
Right.
science of yoga is very simple. This is the science of you, basically. And you as energy or matter, you coexist. And if you understand this science as a science which is about you, then I personally think that we can introduce physics, chemistry, biology, maths, and every other subject in the possible in the world in our syllabus. But if we don't understand the science about us, then everything else will never make sense to us. So I personally
Right.
think that if the science about us is not a part of our syllabus, if it's not a part of our curriculum, then I think we are actually missing a very important part of our education.
Right.
And to an extent where when I got introduced to yoga, and in fact, if you actually read further into yoga, you would realize that the early stage, the earlier that you are able to understand this science. So I have a 15-month-old daughter now, and I personally think that because we are into yoga, she's also able to adopt a little about it. And if she
Right.
grows, her understanding of herself will be much higher as compared to any other kid in the same age who doesn't understand the science about herself or himself. So I think this science is just the yoga is just a name. This science is about us. This science is about me. This science is about you. So we need to understand it from a very early stage.
Right. So, but that was a very brilliant answer to describe about oneself. And actually, this thing could also be seen in the present world where people are not actually thinking about what they want to do. Like the technical things and the technical advancements are easily available to them, but their self satisfaction, their interior satisfaction, that is something that is missing. And that is what the world is actually focusing upon. But sir, you didn't answer my first question. The
Yeah, I
initial
will do
question was,
that.
how did you come across this thing?
So Suryansh, my first company was a pure edtech company, and I think we had a successful exit from that company. And obviously, at that point of time, it was something which I always wanted to grow beyond a certain point of time. As an entrepreneur, that I still had the hunger to do something bigger. And when I was trying to explore, so I spent a very good time in the West, living in the US for almost a year. And almost, I traveled across almost 30 states in India, or 29 states in India.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to live in almost 5 different countries during that time after selling off my first company. And I think during that time, I realized that we talk about all this modern stuff, which includes the modern sciences, which includes the technology. But if you actually want to go deeper into that, the human understanding has to be elevated. So, for example, I will give you a very simple example about space technology. I personally think that the current science will always look at stars light years away. While 10,000 years back or 5,000 years back, they had a very different unit of measurement, which did not look at stars light years away. And for them, probably it was easier to travel between the stars as well. I don't know how true is that, because what we believe is what we have seen or what we have read. But I still think that a lot of this science, if it becomes a part of our understanding, we can actually further the science that basically is present around us or what is known to us. So I think my personal interest got into yoga and all these sciences because I realized that the capability of a human mind was somehow restrained or was somehow restricted because there was an important science about us that we have not been able to understand well. And if that science is something that we are able to understand, then I think we can actually further and deepen our understanding even for the modern sciences and modern technology. So
Right.
the innovations can happen faster, the inventions can ever happen faster, the discoveries can happen faster. If you go into the history, you would realize that we are living in an age called Kali Yuga, but we are still in the very early stages of Kali Yuga. So there will be a golden period that will come some 5,000, 7,000 years later. So we kind of keep cribbing about what is not right in the world, but
Hmm.
we also need to look at the world in a very positive and optimistic perspective, that humans were able to create so much for the world. And if we are able to really get our conscious really, I would say, elevated, then I think whatever developments happen, they will happen faster and more consciously and more sustainably as well. So I think that's why I probably picked this up. A long answer to a very short question, but I think that's the only thing that I can say.
So, following to the last answer that you mentioned, I have my next follow-up question. So, since you said that people are actually focusing on the negatives and they are neglecting the positives in the present scenario, so how can an entrepreneur look at something that society perceives as unfavorable, but instead identify it as a business opportunity and make the positives overpower the negatives out of that?
So, Suryansh, you have to understand that we are all living in a social world, right? And there is a very important aspect called detachment that yoga teaches you, right? So detachment doesn't mean that you basically die or you force yourself from a fourth floor in a building so that once you come down, then after that you are detached from the world. So that doesn't mean detachment. Detachment means you are in a state where you accept what is around you, right? You look at things in a very logical and sensible way, and then you keep everything out. When I say everything out, your emotions mostly, because your emotions at times make you very extreme in terms of emotions. You are either very positive or negative. We should be
Right.
balanced. So once we are as entrepreneur balanced in our emotions, I think things really don't affect us so much, because then we are detached. So at times some people will give you opinion which will be good to listen, which can really help you. You will listen to it, you will you will basically interpret it in your own way and basically put into practical use whatever you think is right. And at the same point of time, there'll be critiques around you which could be negative, but again, because you are a very balanced person, you would not take that critic as a negative thing. You would still
Right.
analyze it in a way, same logical way, without too many emotions attached to it, put to use whatever you think is right, and then just go forward, right? I think this
Right.
is where you need to practice a little bit of detachment as entrepreneur. That becomes the biggest asset I would say that an entrepreneur needs to develop is detachment, because that keeps your emotions in a balanced state, and you are not too happy, not too sad, you're always balanced, focused, consistent. So all these traits come and develop inside you basically.
Right. So, since you said about maintaining the balance between the rights and the wrongs, I would like to ask you another question about balance, right? Well, you belong to an era where things started to change very rapidly. Technology started to change so rapidly that it was difficult for most of the companies to actually cope up with that. And they had to succumb because of it. But you are trying to maintain a balance between the present technology and you're also trying to take up the ancient science that has been stated way back in the Vedas. So how difficult was that for you?
So Suryansh, understand very simple thing when anybody is thinking about being an entrepreneur or trying to choose entrepreneurship as a profession. Then I think whatever we do, we have to be extremely sure about being relevant, right? So being relevant means that, as you said, the things are changing very fast. But can you create an enterprise that has that culture and DNA of being
Right.
in sync with that pace, right? So in our era, when things change overnight, if everything is changing overnight, then your organization has to have that culture, which basically kind of is a part of the DNA of the organization, that it is also able to change and innovate fast, right? We say we are changing fast. Imagine 1,000 years from today. If that speed we have today, would we be able to cope? No. But maybe 1,000 years later, the speeds will be much higher, right? But still, there'll be organizations coping and will be in sync. Their DNA and culture will be like that. So I personally think that we should learn from the past, be only concerned about the present, because the future and the past is something that really doesn't lie in our purview. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna very clearly says that it is a process that you should be involved in. and not the outcomes. So we should really be reflective on our past, whether my past or the global civilization's past, learn from it, apply into my present, right? With the present conditions. If it's the speed that matters, I should be fast, right? But the future is something which will basically decide on its own. You could be the best entrepreneur around, and maybe you will face too many hurdles in the next 5 years, but that's okay, right? Because you are still relevant. So that's
True.
what you should stay relevant. It's very important to stay relevant.
Okay. So speaking about the past, since you belong to an engineering background, there must be memories and incidences that you could never forget, right, from your college. So could you share a few of those with us?
So I think the 4 years of engineering, every moment is a moment where right from the point you sleep, right from the point you wake up, I think, and even between that, when you are sleeping, there are times when you would remember each and every moment. But I think the one of the moments that I really remember and which I've really written as something as what guides me. So in my college, I think we had around 10,000 students, right? And uh, I got an opportunity to head my cultural fest in my third year. So generally, the
Okay.
final year people used to become the head of the cultural fest, but I got an opportunity in my third year. And at that point of time, we changed the level of organization of that entire festival. So we were probably at scale X. We actually took the level of that fest 10x. I mean, that's what we did that year. I have written that note down that whenever I feel that I'm not able to do something uh, with all my might or really scale something, I go back and look at that statement that, there is something that I remember that I've done in the past, which keeps driving me today as well. So
Yeah.
obviously, outcome is not in my hand, but at least the effort that I put in should be of that amplitude. So I think that is one very important incident that I remember from my college experience. The other experience was that on the final day when we were graduating, we had our BTP, the BTech project, the final BTech project. My presentation happened, everything went well. Uh, I came back, and for some reason, I had a huge fight with the librarian in our college. That's a very funny incident. I was sitting in the library, and he told me something which was not in the right state and whatever. So I shouted on him, he shouted on me, and he finally got the guards to pull me out. And remember, I mean, I'm done with my engineering, right? This was the most difficult thing that I could do was complete my engineering. I was able to do that. And after that, I was actually, so there was a disco that was announced on me. So disco is the disciplinary committee. And
Okay.
I didn't know that the head librarian had the power to reach out to the board of governors of the institute directly. So I
Okay.
was like in deep shit because I'm done with my engineering and now there's a disciplinary committee on me. And for the first time in my 4 years, I was facing that. And that to post my engineering actually. But because of all the good work and whatever goodwill that I had in the college for the last 4 years, it was just a very normal process I went through. And finally, they said, Prasoon, it's okay, we know you and whatever. But I somehow realized that your good karma, my past 4 years of good karma was
Yeah.
actually something that protected me in that final moment. Otherwise, my degree would have been cancelled on the same day. So I think that's
Okay.
the funny incident which I remember probably from my.
So speaking about the college life, and as you also mentioned about the BTP, so were you kind of a person who did the project on the very last night, or you had completed that way before the deadline was there?
So I am a great manager, so I'm a people's man. I love making friends. I love talking to people. So that's what I've been always good at. So in the presentation, I had already started my company then. So I was very busy with the company. And
Okay.
I had those great friends in my batch who were the batch toppers and they were my great friends. So they told me that Prasoon, the first three slides you introduce, rest we'll take care of. So I think that's how my BTech project happened. I don't know what we did beyond that. It was all my friends. They were awesome people. And they told me, Prasoon, you run your company and we will manage it. So that's what I did.
I hope I also find these kind of friends in my college. I'm just hoping for that. And also, you have also mentioned that most of your co-founders were your batchmates, right? So, did that relationship become special after the company was incepted, or you had that special relationship during the college time as well?
So I think both are inseparable because your relationships always get better, right? So definitely had a very good relationship with my co-founders till that point. In fact, when we organized the cultural festival in our third year, that was the team which worked together, right? So obviously we had that professional working experience in the past as well. So I think there was a very good relationship already existing. But when you start a company, the things, I mean, once you're out of your engineering campus, things change, you know. In your campus, you are like the most important people. The ministers of the country will come and talk to you. They will actually praise you. Once you are out, you are nobody, right? So once you're out of the campus, you're actually one among the million people out there trying to do similar stuff, what you are trying to do. I think at that point of time, these relationships do change because then these are the people who are around you and they come from the same set of relationships. So I think that's where you really cherish them and they will only get better and better and better.
Okay. So I can definitely say that you're a people's man because it's just been 15 minutes talking to you, and I feel like talking to you continuously for the whole day. So moving on, since you have talked about your company and your first startup, and you have also mentioned the importance of networking that networking plays in a startup or while you build a company, right? So, is it that a person should actually focus on building the networks first and then starting the company right after their graduation, or they should just simply dive into that corporate world and build, yeah, their own company?
I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
If you are Joe Biden, the
Hmm.
president of the United States of America, right? So would you start making your relationships with the global leaders before you become the president or after you become the president?
After I become the president,
So
obviously.
you started before that, but your relationships will actually improve or change. You will make a better network,
Okay.
but wherever you are, whoever you are, if your ambition, if your future you think is in an entrepreneurship kind of profession, then start doing it right away. Wherever you are in a college. So when I was in my college, I was the person who was inviting most of the guest speakers. I was the person who was actually reaching out to most of the sponsors. I used to love this kind of work because that used to give me that kind of a platform to build a relationship. So like you are talking to me, I was the person talking to a guest in my college. So I think
Okay.
that gives you that leverage and platform to develop these relationships. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, relationships always are valuable.
I'm definitely on the seventh sky right now. Okay. So moving on from that. So you have talked about your Tech Buddy, the first company, right? So what are the key things that you took forward from Tech Buddy, or what were the key lessons that you got from it?
The first key lesson was that you would have been talking to a billionaire because today, if that company existed, EdTech, you know,
Right.
every EdTech company is a multi-billion-dollar company. So, which I'm not, but anyway, so that's how you basically stick to your journey in entrepreneurship. The biggest learning that I have was that in entrepreneurship, what matters is uh, consistency and perseverance. And I say that every entrepreneur has consistency and perseverance, but it is a very simple thing that I kind of now learn is whatever I did for those 4 years, we did extremely great stuff. But because we were not relevant to the time, you know, we were a little early in the entire thing,
Hmm.
we could not scale that much. So we talked about the relevance just now, right? So you
Hmm.
said that things change fast. We were already very, very far ahead, right?
Right.
But you can't be too far ahead as well. You need to be relevant, right? So what I learned was that if you're not relevant again, right? If you're not basically relevant to the current context in the business ecosystem, you can actually create moon stuff in the future that may not sell today, right? So it's very important to
True.
be relevant to the present and current context. You can
Hmm.
create rocket ships in the future, but today your business has to create sense and relevance. The
Hmm.
other important stuff was that when we spent our 4 years in that company, I somehow realized that technology is the way to scale up things. I sincerely believe in that. And today also in Sattviko, we are doing some awesome stuff with technology in yoga. Globally, I think we are the only company that does that stuff. So I think technology, whether you believe it or not, there are still people in disbelief. Whether you believe it or not, if you don't have that technology mindset to solving problems, you can apply any science. But if you don't have technology at the core of it, you're losing on a lot of your current speed and scale. So I think I always think problems in terms of how technology can solve it. And if there is an answer to that, then I proceed. Otherwise, I don't proceed with most of these things.
Okay. So, since you mentioned about the relevance of time, well, you also had mentioned in a TED talk in the past that the mentor-mentee relationship is really important in someone's life. But in the present scenario, when we look at the edtech companies that are actually booming right now, don't you feel that they are actually cutting that teacher-student relationship out and it is decreasing of a sort?
Well, Suryansh, you have to understand something that right now, when I'm talking to you, I'm building a relationship. And this is because of technology, right? When I'm talking here to any number of people who are a part of this session, I don't know, but there is an education and there is a learning which is happening, right? So obviously with technology, learning has definitely scaled up. It has really got democratized. Now, if you had asked me to come to Pune for doing this talk, maybe I would have said no because of my travel schedule. But
True.
I love doing it. So why would I say no to it if it is accessible to me sitting at my home while I'm still able to work, right? So I think technology does have a lot of merits. When you say the relationships, I think in my company, I have a business coach, right? I got allotted the business coach through Stanford University. He's a guy sitting in the US, very successful entrepreneur. I've never met him because of the pandemic, we could not get a chance to travel. Neither he was able to travel, nor I was able to travel. The kind of relationship that I have made with him over the last 6 months is phenomenal. I mean, I can tell you that I can now share stuff with him that I don't share with anybody else, right? So I don't think that technology is a challenge. We should accept this change. We should we should basically change a little bit in ourselves. We should make those changes that can make us use this to our merit, rather than saying that it is basically. So obviously there will be some things that can never be done online. So for example, I don't think how you guys will actually study purely online, and engineering cannot be, because engineering is about spending time outside the that 1 hour lecture with your friends and spending those moments, which will remember, even post your engineering. And I think that's the biggest takeaway of engineering. Now you can't replicate that part into an online world. But if you just talk about a lecture per se, yes, why not? Because it's better. I get a recorded thing, I can make notes, I can be at my ease, I can sit in a pajama and whatever, right?
So it's about that absorption thing apart from that regular classroom curriculum that is important. But
There'll
that
be
is
always
something
a
which is
hybrid. There will always be a hybrid, and some things will never be online, some things will never be offline. So we will
right.
always have that balance going on.
So would you like to join us for an offline session sometime in future if it is possible?
Yeah, I would love to, of course, Suryansh. It's just that, as I told you, it's awesome if we are able to interact through this technology mode, and because it really removes the travel constraints, right? And it also kind of serves the purpose of both of the parties. But yes, would love to and explore it post this session. We can do that.
Okay. So since COVID struck, there was a general perception that changed towards the healthy food and the healthy lifestyle that people have started to adopt. Right. So what changes are you seeing in demand of Sattviko and apart from that?
So, Suryansh, we have to understand that the world is witnessing much larger pandemics that we don't recognize. We recognized COVID because COVID was infectious. There are these chronic lifestyle problems that people are today grappling with. You see a person around you. I bet some of the other stuff in that person is wrong. Maybe diabetes, maybe hypertension, PCOD, weight, and most of these issues are because of the lifestyle and imbalances in the body. So I don't see there was I don't think that COVID pandemic was an accelerator for any sort in terms of demand actually. There could be some surge, but obviously lockdowns bhi hue, sab kuch hua. But I can tell you that at least it has made people more conscious. So today
Right.
we at least talk about these problems. We were not talking about these problems. Today people talk about these problems. So I personally think we are a little ahead of where we were 2 years back in terms of our consciousness towards being healthy. Yes, that is true. But even which has
But
enlarged the market maybe.
but is it actually affecting the population? Because there are people who are talking about it, right? But are people ready to accept that change that they have to take towards that healthy lifestyle?
I will tell you that nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to. There is a famous saying: everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
Right.
So the day people start realizing that what we are living with is something that can kill us overnight. I think it has happened with me in the past. At some point of time, I've just shared the happiest part of my life. There was a very sad part of my life when I underwent a huge depression, and I think which pushed me into yoga deeply. I was almost suicidal at that point of time. I had most of the issues that I could imagine that could happen with a person at the age of 27, 28. And I was probably a 50-year-old guy in the body of a 27-year-old guy, of person, right? At that point of time, I took to yoga, which changed me completely. Today, I can do stuff. My body fat percentage is close to 10.5%, and I eat everything, right? I'm not a person who would not eat anything. I'm a vegetarian, so I stick to that. But yoga is something that changed me as a person, and I was pushed into yoga because I was almost dying. I thought if I don't recover from this, I will die. So one option with me was taking a tablet, which was an antidepressant, which would have pushed me further into further closer to the death and really bad death. Today, if I die, at least I'll die happily, right? So I think that's what the difference is. I want to die happily. I want to make the people around me happy, and I think that's what yoga helped me with.
Okay. So, but looking at the current scenario of the population wants everything to be really fast paced, right? But yoga is something which is really slow. You have to continue doing that
I think that's
for.
that's where that's where people don't understand yoga. People understand yoga is very complicated. People understand yoga is very slow. People understand yoga is very which is not standardized. There are a lot of these myths around yoga. That's why I spoke about relevance. What we do with yoga, we have made it relevant, right? So I'll give you an example. You give me 15 weeks, 108 days. Today we claim that any chronic problem in the world, I'm not talking about terminal issues, I'm just talking about chronic lifestyle issues. You bring that person to me, you give me 15 weeks, guaranteed recovery, just 15 weeks. And you start seeing the effects just in the 5 weeks. Or money back is what we claim. So I think that's why I said relevant, right? Can we make yoga relevant to the current? We can't blame people for being too short-sighted. This is how the human civilization is growing. But can we make our stuff more relevant to that? That's what we need to do as entrepreneurs.
Right, but we know that the general population has started to see the Indian culture in a more kind of a derogatory way, and they are ready to adopt it once it's westernized. Something which we saw with yoga, right? When people started yoga as a business abroad, people in India started to adopt it very fast. They started to talk about it really fast. But is this something that is really good for the society, or this is something which should be addressed by someone which has a even more control over that?
So first of all, I don't understand the question exactly because again, as I would say, what has to happen will happen in a certain way. I think rather than thinking about why people don't understand stuff in India before it goes to the West and comes back, we should rather focus that can we build our own command? Can we build our own authority on the subjects that were a part of our culture? I think what I personally think is that I always dissociate myself from any sort of criticism when people say that why people don't do it. Probably because as we, as a nation, we never promoted it that way, right? So today, when yoga is being promoted, people are taking it up. Whether it came back from the West or not, that's a separate question. Most of the modern yoga gurus, right, from Tirumalai Krishnamacharya to B.K.S. Iyengar to Pitabhai Joyce, all these people are the people who are known as the father of modern yoga, right? They are all still Indians, right? Most of the authentic text that you read in yoga is all Indian. When West was trying to capture it, when West was trying to put its name on it, there were more Indians who came and said, no, it is still something that belongs to us. And people, when we say we are from India, people say, oh, you are yoga brand from India. You should be authentic. So I
True.
think most of our business is outside India. 99% of our business doesn't happen in India, thankfully or fortunately or unfortunately, but it brings a lot of foreign money to our country, which also helps our country in a very, very larger way, right? So I think that's where we contribute.
Okay, so but looking at the present scenario, we see a lot of healthy snacks that are actually entering into the market. But there is an absence of an healthy drink that still has to come in the society. So, what is the reason behind it?
You guys don't have beer or wine?
So, so that isn't something
Pretty
which is
healthy.
healthy, right?
Who said it's not healthy? So, first of all, the definition of health is wrong. I don't think any food can be claimed totally healthy or totally unhealthy, right? There are degrees of healthiness and degrees of unhealthiness. They're always, so just before the session started, I was having juice. It was cold pressed juice. Cold pressed juice did not exist 10 years back, but now cold pressed, it was a freshly made cold pressed juice. I still don't drink juice. I prefer eating fruits, right? But is juice healthy or fruits healthy? So juice
Fruits
is
healthy.
less healthy, fruits are healthier, right? So when
True.
you say, do you have options? Options were always there. You go to your nani ma and dadi ma's house, the achar that she used to prepare was extremely high in vitamin B12. And today vitamin B12 अपना test कराने जाओगे आपको पता चलेगा you don't have vitamin B12 because you are not having achar. So go and have achar, right? But if you have it in excess, it has salt, it has oil, it is going to kill you, right? So I think when you say what is health, the claims only don't support health because these claims are all Western. Most of the large companies in the world, the FMCG companies in the world, they decide what should be claimed. So entire research, the most of the regulations are funded by the large FMCG company so as to suit them. So it's
True.
better that you stick to your own conscience. You read about what health is. You understand your body science, and then decide. Have the pakoda, like enjoy it. Why not? Have chula bhatura. Why not? But if you keep having chula bhatura 7 days a week, 3 times a day, yes, even if you have Karela juice 7 days a week, 3 times a day, you will die. You will die.
Okay. So moving on to that, what does a regular day in your life look like? Because you seem to be a multitasker. You have to manage a company, you have to do yoga, you have to maintain a lot of things. So how do you find the time and what does a regular day in your life looks like?
So, in our life, when we start our lives, we are always trying to reach to that intersection. So imagine there are three circles. The circle one is all about the work that you love doing. The circle two is about the work that you are great at doing. And the circle three is about the work that you are paid for. And if you combine these three circles, that intersection is the work that you love doing, that you are great at, and that pays for you. So I think I've discovered that. So for me, I think my life, you can't actually you can't dissociate my yoga with my entrepreneurial journey, and you can't say that my entrepreneurship is not relevant to my other stuff. So I think I start my day typically at 6 a.m. in the morning, and then for me it's a 4-hour yogic practice. Yoga doesn't mean just the asanas. For me, there are deeper meanings to yoga. I read a lot about yoga. I'm now enrolled into PhD into yoga as well. But for me, I think there are two things that I try to see. Can we modernize the ancient knowledge so as to basically help the current modern world? And that's what I try to do most of the time.
So, uh, moving on from that, what are your opinions on having a co-founder? Because you had a co-founder who was a friend, right? And you had the co-founder at TechBuddy as well, and now you have co-founder at Sattviko as well.
So I can ask a very simple question again. Is it important to have a wife? I mean, why do people have
Not not in
bearing
that
children?
situation right now.
Bearing children is not the objective, right? But when you are into co-living, you are basically sharing your emotions. You're growing together, right? So again, most of the species on this planet, they coexist. And if we coexist in the world, there are certain relationships that have to really get stronger. And in those strong relationships, you are able to converse, you are able to communicate deeper. So for those deeper communication and understanding, you need a co-founder because you're not alone, right? And being alone is not bad. I would say that there are enough people in the world who have created very successful organizations without having a co-founder. But it's a preferable thing if you look at the data and if you go in the historical research, then the most companies which had co-founders did fared better actually. So I think go with that science and logic and.
So, speaking about your company and your co-founder, what is that basic vision that Sattviko has for the future, or what is that basic vision that Sattviko is looking forward to fulfilling?
So we believe in a shlok which is called Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. I think our belief is that in English, if you translate this verse, you would understand that this is all about how can this world be a better place to live. And all of us together as a human civilization are trying to do that. So I think
Right.
as a company, we want to have enough impact globally in terms of changing the lives of the people. So when we look at our customers today, they come back to us and say, "You have changed my life." I think when we look at that impact, we are extremely happy about it. But we still go on, we go forward and try to improve upon that. So I think 5 years later, we would like to have this large community of people globally who are living a happy life, a very healthy life. And obviously, they are much more conscious about their own lifestyle. And so the multiplier impact that they are able to create further on the global community is much higher. So I think that's
Okay.
what we want to become as a company.
So, since Sattviko has a global aim of being a global Indian brand, right? So, what are the hurdles which you faced or which you will be facing in future to make Sattviko a global brand? Because in the past, we haven't seen any Indian startup which has actually reached that global level where it is satisfying the needs and whatever of the society around the world.
So, Suryansh, again, I would say that I have a fractured finger, right? This got fractured last week because I am into advanced yoga. I was trying to do something, and not because of my fault, something fell on me, right?
Right.
So it was a hurdle. But I kept practicing yoga with two fingers, right? So that would have made my two fingers stronger by now. I was doing with four fingers. Now I'm doing with two fingers, the same stuff, right? So probably because I'm not using the other two fingers, my two fingers would have become stronger. We do face hurdles in our life. There are challenges, but if we are consistent, if we are relevant, if we are focused, and we have perseverance, then I think these hurdles will go. For us, we are banking on this entire fact that today people look at themselves more consciously than ever before. And I think if we can take that conscious to the next level by with yoga and food, I think we will be happy as a company.
So it's really unfortunate that we have come towards the end of the session. But before we end this session, I would like to ask you, sir, because you want the global community to have that conscience about yoga, right? So what is that innovation or what is that step that you are planning to take that it becomes really easy for people to adopt that thing?
So I think I've already spoken about it, Suryansh. Yoga for people today is extremely complicated. It's a science which people think that they don't understand. It's a science which they don't think has a timeline to it. They think it's very slow, and they basically restrict it. At times, I meet people. They say, "I do yoga for flexibility and I do weights for strength." Well, yoga is about everything, right? So I think we have created a technology. This is basically based on some modern artificial intelligence, and what we have done is we have actually created, we have actually reinvented yoga in a certain way that a modern uh, civilization person or a modern consumer is able to easily understand it, adopt it, and practice it beyond those 15 weeks that we do with them as well. So I think
Okay.
using technology, we are able to do that. And I think we have made yoga so simple and there is no human involved. So if you look at a yoga practice, most of the time you would need a coach to help you out. We have removed that coach element and reduced it to almost 5% as against the 100%, and still like very personalized, very standardized. I think that's what we have been able to implement using technology in yoga.
Hmm. Okay. So that was Mr. Prasoon Gupta for you, ladies and gentlemen. I
Thank you
have
guys.
you had a
Thank you so
lot to
much.
learn and take home with you. He's a very humble gentleman. He has a glowing aura of success and he has a vision of giving back to the society. His courage, his determination, along with his foresightedness, is something what we should totally look up towards making impossible inevitable. And with this, we have come to the end of this episode. Before I conclude this session, I would like to quote the immortal sentiments of Dieter Dorf, and he says that as we lose ourselves in the service of others, we discover our own lives and our own happiness. Thank you everyone for being such a patient and engaging audience. Do
Thank you,
tune in for the
Sarvesh.
second episode of Breaking Conventions. And welcome, sir. It's totally our pleasure to have you here, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Stay in touch. Bye.
Bye, bye, sir.